Yeah, so getting into it, I think the biggest obvious departure in the first episode of the animated series versus the live action one is the fact that we open the live action one with a massacre of the air nomads,
Yes.
which was a choice. We talked about it on the
That's
live
a
action
choice.
one. It's a good sequence in the show. Like I think that they did it well, but it didn't the animated series really I think highlights that you didn't need to spend that
You
time
didn't
on
need to
it.
see that.
Like
It wasn't necessary.
it was 30 minutes and that's more than the entire first episode of the animated one, right? And we just talked about how much they're able to pack into those 30
Within like
minutes.
seconds.
Yeah, and the fact that you just don't need that. And there's a couple of lines dropped in these first two episodes that give you what you need to know about the air nomads not being around anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll get more into it next episode where they do really touch on the fact
Mm-hmm.
that like what happened to the air nomads. But again, in that they don't show it. They make the decision to not show you those events happening. And I think that it's a much stronger show because of that. I think
Mm-hmm.
that leaving that up to the audience's imagination and trusting that they will that whatever you can imagine is going to be more horrific or more powerful or
Mm-hmm.
whatever than actually deciding to spend those crucial minutes, that crucial screen time showing that thing. And also money, like that sequence looked
Money,
expensive.
yeah.
Like
That was an expensive sequence.
that's a lot. There's a lot of
There
VFX
was a
going on
lot
there.
of the
That's
fighting in that. A lot of
yeah,
the effects went into
there's a lot
that.
of actors. There's just a lot going on there,
And
which
that was like a
again is,
big thing we were talking about. The series is so good because everything is necessary.
and that
Was
just
that
wasn't. Yeah,
necessary?
like it wasn't. It didn't. Again, it didn't need to be there. The animated series proved that, and so yeah, that's I think like my biggest thing where I'm like, and but that like dovetails into the larger, I think, big differential point in these, and that the animated series really, really trusts its audience when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to being able to put things together and with its exposition. It doesn't talk at you or to you as an audience, even whenever it's doing narration, like even when it literally is talking to you as an audience and giving you the exposition dump, it doesn't feel like that. It feels so much more genuine and so much more rooted in character versus
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you need to know this, here's why. It's more of it's more of just like taking your hand and like bringing you into the world as
Into the
opposed to
story and
like
trusting you can go along with it.
yeah,
And that's
and
for
give
kids.
yeah, which I think part of it is probably because like you have to think about the attention span of kids too, and like kids are smart. Also, like one, they will know when the show kind of isn't really
Mm-hmm.
trusting them, I feel, and they'll be like, "Well, this is kind of boring. It's just like telling me stuff. I want to
Yeah.
see something happen, right? Like I want to do things and be with these characters." And kids as much as adults, like we care about the story. Like a cool story is cool, but the reason we care about it is because of the people that are a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, really choosing to focus on those characters and the character moments and establish them all is, I think, done much cleaner in the animated series as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the live action one. Um,
And I think that's
also,
something that cements it in history. Like that's what makes
yeah,
it able to last this long. And the amount of times people have talked about this show, analyzed it, and they still can't find holes in the story and they still can't
yeah.
find like it's still we're still trying to find like I can barely find anything where I'm like if I really think hard about this maybe I can find a plot hole, but
Mhm.
still there are ways to justify it. So
And I think
that's
like
interesting.
going with that, two of the notes actually that I took for the live action one were whenever Zuko confronts Aang at the Southern Water Tribe and they have their like first fight, and Zuko like sees him and he's like, "It can't be." Like in response to seeing the Avatar. What do you mean it can't be, dude? You spent 2 years looking for him. Like
Literally.
this should be actually like. Why are you surprised about this? This is your whole thing that you're going here to do. I
And
would
like we
hope.
just talked about, it could be
Yeah,
Kyoshi lived, or which avatar lived to 200? You said
Yoshi.
it
Oh,
was Kyoshi.
all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, love it.
so it
And
could
like
be.
he's like, it can't be. And I'm like, if you don't think it could be, then what are you doing here, man? Like, come on. And then
Exactly.
another thing is that Aang in the live action one, after Katara and Sokka like stand up for him. He's like, and no one has ever fought for me before. Dude, I just watched an entire Southern Air Temple fight for you. They're like for the first 30 minutes of this episode in the live action version, right? Like they no, I just saw that actually.
No.
And that again goes to like, all right, well, if we didn't show that at the beginning of the show, then that line, I guess, could make sense. But by choosing to like add these things or change these things in these ways, they then give themselves contradictions that don't need to be
Mhm.
there in the live action show, which is so wild to me. Like it just I don't
It
understand
so
really.
obviously misses the point of
Yeah,
why we like this show.
which is they had the blueprint right there. And like I get wanting to make changes in the fact that it's going to be an adaptation. It's not going to be the same thing.
Mhm.
It's not going to be one for one. Like I understand, but
Mhm.
it's just like you don't really get the conciseness that you do with the animated series. You don't get the super clear starting points for the character arcs like you do in the animated series. Like
Mhm.
Aang in this immediately, like we said, the first thing he does is try to shrug off his responsibilities, right? He deflects. He says, "No, I didn't know the Avatar." And the live action one, he's like, "Well, we need to get going and like do this. I have a responsibility, like as the Avatar, and we have to go." And it's like, all right, well, like, what's your arc gonna be now, besides just like traveling to go get to learn, even though they
It's
don't even.
literally like the comparison between these two, I think, is coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb. That's
Yeah, it's I just I don't get it. It's a very
you can't
odd thing.
compare.
And they like lose so much of the emotional weight there too by doing that because you rob them of the growth that we expect for them because we've seen
Mhm.
the animated series. And I get also that one of the big points of doing an adaptation to live action in the first place is to obviously pull in more fans because a lot of people will
Mhm.
shrug at animation and say, "Well, I'm not going to watch that because it's animated," which is dumb, but it's a thing,
Which
unfortunately.
is
Like,
you're dumb.
yeah, but like that is a real thing, and I know that the show did absolute gangbuster numbers on Netflix. I know it was like
Yeah.
had however many ungodly amount of views, which is cool, and that means more and more people are into Avatar now, which is great. But hand in hand with that, you get this version that's missing a lot of the
Mhm.
emotional weight or the like cleanness in
It's like
story
studios
and
don't understand why an audience is liking the product.
yeah, like
I
I
think
don't.
the same thing like happened with Barbie. They're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, you like Barbie, so now we'll make a bunch of different movies about other toys." And it's like,
Hmm.
"No, we liked it because it was feminism, because it was
Yeah,
women, not
like
because
I
of
don't.
that."
Yeah, the reason people like Avatar: The Last Airbender isn't because it's called Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's everything else that comes with that, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't just want it in name. I want it in character and in story and world building and
Yes.
themes and like narrative and all of the stuff that makes it Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't just
Mhm.
want the name on there and to see the familiar things
The reason
and
we still look at the Mona Lisa is it's because it's like this mathematical masterpiece. Like everything is
mhm,
so perfect about it. It's
yeah.
not just a drawing of a pretty lady. You can't just
Mhm.
draw a pretty lady and be like, it's like the Mona Lisa. Oh, I could do
It's
that.
like
Like,
no.
no, it's for the time, like it's done so perfectly. Like there's a reason we're still talking about a lot of old art pieces today. Like this is
Mhm.
the reason we still talk about this is because it's so perfect. It's
Yeah.
almost like to reach perfection is near impossible. And the
Mhm.
fact that they almost did that, that's insane.
Oh, it's wild. And it's the reason, like you just said, we're still talking about it, and
Yeah.
they just miss so much of that in the live
Mhm.
action one. These episodes also, it loses the comedy is essentially not there in the premiere. I mean, in most of the Netflix show in general, the comedy's not really there, but like
Yeah.
there is are so many comedic moments in these first two episodes of the animated series. Like I think part of it is that you lose the ability to do the same kind of visual gags in animation because like a lot of it will be
Mhm.
like character expressions or character movements that like you can't really do in live
Yeah. Oh,
action.
like there's a part in the ship where Aang is looking, he's on the Fire Nation ship, he's looking for his staff, and
Hmm.
he goes into a room and Iroh's sleeping. and he slowly shuts the door and like his mouth is still in the door and he's like, "Sorry."
Oh, yeah, like,
It's
you just you
such a good gag. It's
yeah,
so
and,
cute.
like, the show is just littered with those throughout the entire
Yes.
runtime. All like, just consistently, it has things like that, and you aren't able to translate that to live action. I think they
Mhm.
and the thing that hurts is they try to get a lot of the, like, the meme moments in there, right? Like, they'll and it's getting
Mhm.
into, like, later stuff, but, like, I've seen the Netflix account posting, like, the Cabbage Man and stuff, or,
And they're
like,
like, "We got
whatever
him,
thing.
haha."
Yeah, and it's like, alright, well, like,
Did you
yeah, that's a f
justify it though?
like, that's a funny moment in the show, and, like, the fandom likes that, of course, but that's not why I'm watching the show.
And
Like,
why
that's
did they
not
like edge it? They like edged it. They
I'm
wouldn't
like,
let
"Come
us
on."
hear it
Yeah, I'm like, "Come on,
until
dude,
the
I
end.
we don't need that, I
We
guess,"
didn't
but
need that.
yeah, it's there's just
And
so
yeah,
many examples
I would
like
also
that.
like to talk about the characters. There's one thing, what I love about Katara is in, I think like, I was watching this at 8 years old, and that was the first time I think I saw a woman on screen being angry and yelling
Yeah,
and it being okay and nobody being like, you need to be a little polite girly girl and,
mhm,
bow down to men around you and you can't be stronger than the guy, but,
mhm,
you gotta hold your own. But she was powerful. She yelled. She was angry. And my favorite quote is that the creator said what they wanted to do with this show is they wanted to tell boys to feel their feelings and girls to feel their anger.
mhm.
And that
It's
was
so good.
so many women are told to hide their rage, to not show emotions.
Yeah,
And like here's this girl on screen, she's yelling and she's fighting and she's praised for it and she's
yeah.
awesome for it.
And
Um
she's very obviously the moral compass of the group too.
yes.
Like, and the only person that is telling her that she's wrong in that is Sokka, who is also the show makes very apparent
Very apparent.
that he's wrong for
He's
having
in the
that stance.
wrong.
Like, that's his entire arc too, and so it's just like they get intertwined so well with that. Versus in the live action show, Katara's not really
Yes.
angry at all. And oh, this
Yeah.
is okay. Here's something. The inciting incident in the live action show, like
Mhm.
as I mentioned earlier, the inciting incident in the animated series, Katara getting angry and breaking the iceberg, right? That's how
Mhm.
Aang gets freed.
Yeah.
In the live action show, I don't know why the iceberg breaks and Aang comes out.
It literally just
It
does
just happens
because
because
we
it
need the story to happen.
yeah, it happens
Like
because it has to happen, but I don't know why, besides the fact that that's what happens in the show so that things can get started,
it's
but
like
there's
its
no
little timer went off and it was like, "Okay, it's time.
you're like,
Here I
"Oh, man,
come."
it's been 100 years." Like, Aang set
Oh,
his
so
Avatar
it's
State
100 years, guys.
stopwatch, like,
It's so much.
for 100 years, and I don't understand how you can go so far as to not have a proper inciting incident. That's insane. That's like storytelling
Mhm.
101, right? And that's another thing where again going again going back to the air nomad thing and why we didn't need to open with that. You're
Yeah.
supposed to start your story at like if you're not breaking the rules, right? If you're not like
Mhm.
whatever director or writer who's made 20 movies and is now like going against the normal thing, right? It's
Mhm.
very good storytelling practice to start your story as close as possible to your inciting incident that's going to change the characters' lives, right?
Mm. Mhm.
That's why within like 2 minutes we have the iceberg cracking open and then coming out, and everything is changed from there. The avatar is
Mhm.
back into the world. Happens about 35 minutes into the live action series, right?
Yeah, and, like, we keep watching because we wanna know, like we keep questioning, we're like, "Okay, but why was he there? Why" like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I wanna find out what that was."
Yeah,
Oh, like, that keeps you interested in the story. If you know everything at the beginning, you're like, "Okay, well, I know everything. I don't there's nothing I
yeah.
need to know, or that's gonna keep me coming back for more."
It's just
It's
again like trusting your audience to like, well, we'll get to that stuff later. You don't need it
Mhm.
front loaded at the beginning to start the story.
Yeah. I
Like,
hate the comparison I just made in my head. I was like, "The show's a slut. It gives you everything up front.
it
Why buy
it
the
does.
cow if it gives you the milk for free?"
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, it just gets I don't understand. Like it's such weird decisions all across the board that I just am perplexed by.
It
Like,
almost feels gluttonous. Like, I hate to describe it that way, but it feels like they just wanna give you everything right away, immediately, no patience, no waiting.
Yeah.
It-
It just
they're like, here it all is.
no,
And we're done. We did it.
yeah. So I
I'm
mean,
not
I think
happy.
I think those were most of my big comparison points for at least these two episodes for the
Same,
premiere
yeah.
thing.
There was, oh, I
But
did love Zuko saying, he ran.
yeah,
That's my
that's a great.
favorite bit.
I love that line delivery. I can't lie. I think it's so funny.
It's so like, and that
It's
does
in
make sense.
it's on point. He's so
It's on
mad.
point. He's an angry teenager.
He's so salty about
And
it.
his hands are here.
Yeah,
It's so
he's got
good.
the full. Oh, it's great. Loves that.
Hey, Aspect listener, enjoying the show?
Then be sure to subscribe here on The Aspect so you never miss an episode.
And check out more episodes and clips on our playlist here.
Thanks so much for watching, and
Lameo Hot Man.